Wherever you are in the world, we welcome you to Music Translation. We are excited for this opportunity to help you translate or review a new song for the Church's Children and Youth Development Program. Today, we will explain the new tools and process for sacred music translation. This video will guide you step by step as you translate or review the song, I Will Walk with Jesus. You may have been involved in translation before, even music translation for the Church. Whatever your translation background, we would like to introduce you to a new way of approaching translations that are set to music. What kind of text is the song you will be translating today? It is poetry. Poetry is a special kind of text that requires unique writing skills. The tools and training for this song will help you gain these skills. Throughout this training, you will be invited to pause the video in order to complete your work step by step as it is explained. At any point, if you have questions or if you would like additional guidance for your language, please contact a linguist at church headquarters. You have been sent 4 files: a translation worksheet, a music worksheet, an audio file of the song with vocals, and an audio file of the song without vocals. In addition to these files, we recommend you also have ready a dictionary, a Bible, and a triple combination in your language. If you wish, you may listen to the audio file before you begin translating or reviewing. However, that is not an essential first step in translating or reviewing the song. Our promise to you is that if you follow exactly the translation process we explained to you, your translation will fit the music perfectly at the end. For that reason, we will initially focus on the words of the song, and we will set aside the music for now. Let's begin.
We will start by using the translation worksheet, which explains the meaning and form of the text itself. Please open the translation worksheet. We will explain the format of this document as you complete the translation or review. At the top is the title of the song. We will not translate the title at this time. Translating the title will be one of the last steps in the process. Instead, let's move down to the overview. The overview provides information regarding the message and general structure of the song. Translators and reviewers, please pause this video and read the overview. Now that you understand the message and general structure of the song, let's look at the text of the song. This song has 3 verses and a chorus. Each page of this translation worksheet is dedicated to 1 verse. Before you start translating or reviewing, read through each verse of the song in English, one at a time, so that you understand the meaning of all its words and phrases. First, read the original poetic text in English. As you read, you will notice footnote markers which correspond to additional explanations at the bottom of the page. Next, read the prose. Prose is text without poetic form, meaning this is the same text but in more simple, natural language. This is included to help you understand what the poetic text is trying to say. This is not the text you should be translating. By using the original poetic text, the footnotes, and the prose, you should be able to understand the message of each verse of the song. Pause the video at this time to read the poetic text, the footnotes, and the prose in English for all 3 verses and the chorus. Now that you've finished reading the song and understand each verse, let's look at the last page of the translation worksheet. The supplemental materials table contains additional information that will appear on the final sheet music, including scriptures associated with the message of the song. Using your language's scriptures, take the time now to read the verses connected to this song. What insights do these scriptures give you about the text? Is there any vocabulary you can use in your translation? Keep this in mind as we go back to verse 1 to begin translating or reviewing.
Reread the English poetic text and ensure you understand the meaning of each word and phrase. Translators, in the upper right-hand box, create an initial translation that preserves the meaning without considering any specific form. Do not worry about rhyme or line length, for example. Simply create a word-for-word translation. Translators, you will now revise your initial translation by considering the poetic form. The form chart in the bottom left-hand box shows you the meter, rhythm, rhyme, and repetition of the text, which are the basic elements of poetry. We will apply each of these elements to your translation in a specific order: meter, rhythm, rhyme, repetition. We promise you that approaching your revision in this order will save you time and will help you create true poetry.
Translators and reviewers, let's first consider meter. Meter, for our purposes, refers to the length of each line, as measured by the number of syllables. Notice that each line of the English text has been separated into a pattern of syllables. A syllable is a unit of pronunciation that generally has one vowel sound and could have surrounding consonants. Examples in English include God, Savior, salvation. In verse 1, line 1 has 6 syllables. Therefore, we will say that the meter is 6 syllables. Line 2 has 5 syllables, so the meter is 5 syllables. Line 3 is 11 syllables. Line 4 is 6 syllables. Line 5 is 5 syllables. And line 6 is 11 syllables. Thus, the pattern of meter in verse 1 is 6, 5, 11, 6, 5, 11. Translators, now look at your initial translation for verse 1 and revise it to follow the same meter pattern. 6, 5, 11, 6, 5, 11. Reviewers, check to be sure the proper meter was followed in each line. Pause the video while you adjust or check the translation to be sure it fits the original meter. At any point in the translation process, please feel free to take the idea that the English expresses, but to say it in your own words, according to the expressions and grammar of your own language. Due to poetic constraints of meter, rhythm, rhyme, and repetition, you have the artistic freedom to rearrange thoughts and remove content as needed to highlight the most important ideas or concepts. Here are some examples. To preserve the form, you may need to rearrange the order of words in a line. For example, in line 1 you could say, "In wisdom Jesus walked." That is perfectly acceptable. To preserve the form, you may need to rearrange the order of lines. For example, in lines 1 and 2 you could say, "Jesus grew in truth." Jesus walked in wisdom. To preserve the form, you may even need to remove content that is not essential. For example, for lines 1 and 2, you could say, "Jesus walked in wisdom and truth." You may even need to use different vocabulary entirely to express the same idea. For example, Jesus lived a life of truth. We share these examples with you so that you better understand the artistic skills you will need to stay true to the form of the text. Form is essential to successfully translating the text of a song. The text of a song is poetry. The limitations that are created by poetic form should not frustrate you, but should instead draw creativity out of you. Be creative and talk to a linguist at church headquarters if you are struggling to maintain the form in your translation. Reviewers, direct translations are not necessary and may not be appropriate in hymn translation. Be sure that the translation is faithful to the message of the English, but do not hold the translator to a strict word-for-word rendering. As you review and offer comments, you must also consider preserving meter, rhythm, rhyme, and repetition. If you have any questions about meter, please contact a linguist at church headquarters.
Translators and reviewers, Once you are sure that verse 1 has the proper meter, it is time to check the rhythm. Rhythm is the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in a line of poetry. The rhythm is indicated on the form chart by bolded and unbolded syllables. The bolded syllables are where the stress falls when you are reading the text out loud, not necessarily when you are singing the text. The rhythm of this text is stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed. So it sounds like this when you read it. Jesus walked in wisdom. Jesus grew in truth. He showed love to God and man while in his youth. Now consider where you place the stress of words in your language. Is it always on the first syllable of a word? The last syllable of a word? Does your language not have stress? The best way to determine whether your translation fits the right rhythmic pattern is to try reading your translation line by line out loud, according to the rhythmic pattern on the form chart. The first line should have the following pattern. Jesus walked in wisdom. Now read yours. Does it fit the rhythm, and does it sound natural? If not, then you may need to rearrange words in the line or choose different words that have different stress in order to fit the pattern. When making changes, you must also remember to maintain the meter. Special note: does your language always place stress on the final syllable of a word? If so, the last syllable in lines 1 and 4 of your translation may be omitted to ensure that the line ends on a stressed syllable. This possible modification is indicated on the form chart using an underline and parentheses. If this applies to your language, the new meter pattern for each verse becomes 5-5-11, 5-5-11. This will still fit the music perfectly. If you have any questions about rhythm, please contact a linguist at church headquarters.
Translators and reviewers, once you are sure the translation has the proper rhythm, it is time to check the rhyme in verse 1. Rhyme is the correspondence of similar sounds between words. The rhyme is indicated on the form chart by matching colors. For example, in verse 1, lines 2 and 3, you will see that the two red syllables at the end of each line, truth and youth, have a similar sound. These words rhyme. Similarly, in lines 5 and 6, the two blue syllables at the end of each line, way and day, have a similar sound. However, this pair of syllables in blue has a different sound than the first pair in red. This difference in sound between rhyming pairs is noted on the far right of the form chart by the capital letters AA and BB. AA represents the first rhyming pair. BB represents the second rhyming pair. Lines designated with the same letter all rhyme with each other. To achieve the proper rhyme, you may need to be creative by rearranging the order of words in a line, rearranging the order of lines in a verse, or choosing different rhyming words altogether. When making changes, you must also remember to maintain the meter and the rhythm. Translators, add the rhyme pattern in your translation. Place rhyming syllables in the same locations in your translation as they are in the English form chart. Reviewers, check to be sure the proper rhyme pattern was followed. If you have questions about rhyme, please contact a linguist at church headquarters.
Translators and reviewers, once you are sure the translation has the proper rhyme pattern, it is time to consider preserving repetition in verse 1. Repetition is intentionally repeating words or phrases to create a poetic effect in the text. Repetition is always noted on the form chart using gray highlights. You will notice that there are no gray highlights in verses 1, 2, or 3, which means there is no intentional repetition in those verses. However, in the chorus, lines 1 and 7 are highlighted in gray. This means they are exact repetitions in English, and lines 1 and 7 in your translation should be exact repetitions as well. When translating the chorus, be sure to first refine your translation for meter, rhythm, and rhyme before you worry about repetition. Reviewers, when you reach the chorus, check to be sure that it contains a repetition in lines 1 and 7. If you have questions about repetition, please contact a linguist at church headquarters.
Translators and reviewers. An additional element in the form chart of this song is the phrase mark shown by this symbol in line 3 of each verse. You will see the phrase mark after the 7th syllable of line 3 in each verse. This phrase mark is placed to show you that the 7th syllable should be the end of a word and phrase. Therefore, the 8th syllable should start a new word and phrase. No word should extend between the 7th and 8th syllable of this line. Please note, however, that the English author chose not to follow the phrasing pattern in verse 3. We know this because the word even stretches from the 7th syllable to the 8th syllable. This is inconsistent with the first two verses and requires a change in the musical notation. If at all possible, you should be consistent in each verse by following the phrasing pattern rather than matching the adjusted English phrasing in verse 3. Reviewers, check to be sure that the phrasing mark in line 3 of each verse is followed. If you have questions about phrasing, please contact a linguist at church headquarters.
Translators and reviewers, now that you have considered meter, rhythm, rhyme, repetition, and phrasing, check to be sure the translation of this verse preserves the intended meaning of the English. Also, check to be sure that appropriate punctuation for your language has been included. The punctuation does not need to match what is used in the English. Also note, each line of each verse and the chorus should start with a capital letter, even if it is not the beginning of a new sentence. Translators, if you are satisfied with the translation, copy the translation in the upper right-hand box and paste it into the hyphenated translation box in the bottom right. You will notice in the English form chart that hyphens are used to divide words into syllables and indicate which syllables should be sung on a separate note. In preparation for putting the text to music, hyphenate your translation by inserting a hyphen between syllables, not between words, as follows. Reviewers, ensure that the text in the hyphenated translation box has been properly hyphenated. Also, check to be sure the hyphenated text matches the text in the translation box above it. Translators, when you are done translating and hyphenating verse 1, repeat the translation process for verses 2, 3, and the chorus. Take time to write an initial translation and then consider meter, rhythm, rhyme, repetition, and phrasing, in that order. Finally, create a hyphenated translation for each verse. Reviewers, when you are done reviewing verse 1, repeat the process for verses 2, 3, and the chorus. When making suggestions for the translator, consider the proper meter, rhythm, rhyme, repetition, and phrasing.
Translators and reviewers, the final page of the translation worksheet contains the supplemental materials. This is additional information that will appear on the final sheet music. There are instructions in the special notes section of the page to help you decide how to choose a title for the song. There are also footnotes that help explain how to translate each of the other words or phrases on the table. Reviewers, be sure that the special notes and directions were followed for each part of the supplemental materials table.
Translators and reviewers, now it is time to test your translation with music. Listen to the audio recording of the music for the song. You may have to listen several times in order to become familiar with the melody. Once you feel you know the melody well, try to sing the hyphenated version of each verse of the translation. If you encounter any words that sound awkward when sung, or need to be adjusted, then return to the translation or review process. Review the meter, rhythm, rhyme, repetition, and phrasing to identify and solve the problem. Remember our promise to you at the beginning? If you follow exactly the translation process explained in this video, your translation will fit the music perfectly.
Translators, once you are satisfied that the translation fits the music properly, complete the music worksheet. This is the music worksheet. Everything from your translation, including the supplemental materials, has a place on this document. Start by copying and pasting the text from the supplemental materials table into its proper place on the music worksheet, as follows. The title goes here. The mood marker goes here. The text and music citations go here. All rights reserved goes here. This song may be copied for incidental, non-commercial, church, or home use goes here. This notice must appear on each copy made goes here. And the scripture references go here and here. Now, using the hyphenated text of each verse and the chorus, transfer your text from the translation worksheet to the music worksheet, either by typing directly on the music worksheet or by copying and pasting each syllable. Each syllable will have its own box, and you can hit the Tab key to move from one box to another. Be sure to include hyphens between syllables of the same word, not between words, and proper punctuation. If you have questions about the music worksheet, please contact a linguist at church headquarters.
You are now officially poets.
Congratulations!
We sincerely hope you are pleased with your work and have had a great experience. Thank you so much for your time and efforts to spread the gospel through music.